and then I'm going to stream.
You're recording.
Recording, perfect. Let's make this happen. I'm excited.
Shazam.
I love this. You crack me up.
This guy, there's a guy, Darius Mirshahzadeh. He's another guy. He's an author at Scribe. I wrote my book with this company called Scribe. But he is nuts. He, like every like live streaming thing he does, it starts with like him, like, you know, play like we were doing whatever, Space Cowboy, you know that song?
Yeah.
So that's a song he played for like the first minute. That was like, so we're like, woo, woo, you know, like singing along with the song. So,
I absolutely love this. So unfortunately, I'm not going to give you that today, but come back and we'll do it. We'll do it for sure. I absolutely love it. So I am, let's just get this going. So we're going to be doing something different here today. I'm still waiting here to make sure that this works. It says we're streaming live, but I want to make sure. All right.
I can look. You want me to look?
No, we're on. We're actually here.
Okay, cool. And the thing, when I'm streaming, I never know when it actually kicks in. So I'm always kind of doing something weird, and then it finally. So that's how my live streams all start out, like, you know, picking my nose, or, you know, scratching some inappropriate place. So. We're live.
We're live. We are. We're absolutely live. So I am very excited. So this is the first of many to come, and thanks to Dr. Jeff Moody, who just gave me a brilliant idea of why aren't we having these conversations live? So Dr. Moody, welcome. Welcome to Conversations with Courageous Cancer Warriors. This is truly
thank you.
So exciting to have you here today. And I've been stalking you a bit and seeing what you're about. So to kind of give people a little bit of a background, you are a board certified UCLA-trained urologist who then experienced his own burnout after 20 years of working in the field. So with somebody who has worked in the field for 20 years myself, I can say that this is alive and real in the healthcare industry. And it's something that we don't talk about. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, thank you for having me on, by the way. And we have to thank our friend Jody for connecting us. So thank you, Jody.
Thanks, Jody.
But, I'd like to think of myself like growing up and even going through medical school and residency, which is, can be kind of a brutal experience. Like pretty happy-go-lucky, and then got into practice for like 10 years. And essentially, like, at that point, it was just a thing where, like, if we saw a patient, I would just dictate a note. So I had a little dictaphone. I would dictate, 25 patients' notes and be done in like 30 minutes and send that off to a transcriptionist, and boom. Like, that was my whole, like, for 8 hours of work, 30 minutes of dictating to get it done. So then I would say, then 2012 came in. It wasn't the end of the Mayan calendar, but it was kind of like the end of my medical world as I knew it, according to REM. But we got electronic medical record, which otherwise we call that otherwise known as that goddamn thing.
Yes. I've gone through 3 of them, so I understand.
Well, I've gone through like 6 or 7 transitions of electronic medical records. So anyway, as Lori and I both know, electronic medical records were designed to capture data and allow billing to be more efficient. They weren't designed to allow Lori and I help take any better care of patients. And there's been no randomized study that showed that electronic medical records improve care, none. I think they improve documentation. They may improve communication, but they have not been shown to improve care. But they took about an hour and a half more of my day every day for the last 10 years, 8 years. And so, like, you already have a long day starting at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, finishing at maybe 6 or 7 o'clock at night, plus now another hour and a half. And I'm like, this kind of stinks. I think I work kind of hard, and now I'm doing this like box checking and clicking, and the introduction to my book. I wrote a book called The Doctor's Burned Out: A Physician's Guide to Recovery. And the introduction to my book, on the first page, is my picture of my keyboard snapped in half, which is how kind of one of my days ended one day when I had my entire day of work lost by the EMR. So that was kind of my first sign that things weren't so good. And, when I think one of the things about burnout is it's very difficult to tell when you're in it. It's kind of like, a fish doesn't know what water is, but it's very difficult to know when you're in burnout. But if you have like a bad day every day for like a year, it's not just like the day, it's something is not right there. And I think people sometimes ask themselves, like, when was the last time I had a good day, at work? And if it's been like not in a week or a month, there's a problem. There's all these surveys and things that people can take to assess their burnout. But, I just have a series of questions that I go through with people. I'm like, are you having any problem sleeping? Are you having any, bad nutrition? Have you not exercised in a month or a year? Are you having bad financial decision making? Have you been sanctioned by one of your professional boards? Are you having relationship issues? Those, I think, are all really signs and symptoms of burnout. I got to the point where I had some suicidal ideation, very briefly for about 2 seconds, and it scared the devil out of me. And then I'm like, for me, that was kind of the absolute bottom. And then from there, I was like, we got to start getting this handled. And the one thing that I had when the burnout was the worst, I had horrible insomnia. So I was like, okay, we got to get the insomnia handled, because every day was just like this angry, exhausted fog, that I was going through. So got the insomnia better, which got my energy better, which got me exercising again, which got me eating better. And then once kind of like my physical body was better in my, then all of a sudden I felt better and my mental health was better. Started making better decisions, reading more, learning more, started writing my book, which really, I kind of say my book was about 80% therapy for me and maybe 20% that it would help somebody else. And then finally to today. Yeah. So that's in the very long nutshell, that's kind of how it got here. So.
But, you bring up some really valid points, because first and foremost, any job, whether it's healthcare or, if you sit in an office every day, you're with the same coworkers, you kind of get in this routine where you fail to pay attention to how you're being, to what your being is as you're going through this. And, especially now with, the amount of layoffs that's happening, the decreased staff, the increased pressure, you kind of take a look and you think that it's always external factors that are making you have such a crappy day. Right. But
then to me, it's like this accumulation of little teeny weeny tiny little micro, I would call them agreements. Like you say, well, it's okay that I now only get a 15-minute lunch break. It's okay that they want me to stay until 5:30 instead of 5. It's okay that I have to work at night and on the weekends, and you keep making these little agreements. And then all of a sudden, after 6 months or a year or 10 years, you're like, how did I get here? How did I ever agree to any of this?
And I think we could all relate to that, because it's just one of those things that you don't realize how debilitating it can be and how it affects everything outside of your life if you don't have, a happy work life. Yeah. We spend so much time at work. And, I remember when I would hire people, I would be like, what, we could teach you anything. But if the personality doesn't work, the personality doesn't work. You're not going to mesh with the group. So that's really what I want to learn from you today is like, what are you looking for? And I'll tell you what we're looking for, and let's see if we work, right?
Yeah, and is that a match?
Yeah, because it's like if you have, it's like that one bad apple, right, will spoil the bunch. It's just one of those things that, especially in healthcare, it's such a fast-paced, high demand, and you're really dealing with people's lives on a daily basis, every second.
And even though like people say, oh, it's the doctor, blah, 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 baloney, it's a team, If the person who does the ordering doesn't order the right supplies, I don't have the right things to work. If the nurse doesn't have the right things in the room at the right time, we have a saying in surgery, better never than late. Like if you don't have it now, right, I'm not going to get 3 minutes or when things are really bad. So, and if the room's not clean, if the scheduling isn't right, if the anesthesia is not there, it's a team sport, even though we're kind of the captain of the ship, everything has to work. And like you said, one bad apple and then, woo, and if I'm the bad apple, that's not great.
Yeah, but I haven't worked with surgeons my entire life. Like it happens, right? It happens. And I think now that I'm like looking back on it, it's like, it was most likely burnout that had them be such jerks. You know, they have
Yeah.
so much pressure. They don't know how to deal with it, deal with the stress, deal with all of that, that they come in like a bear at 7 o'clock in the morning. And you're like, you haven't even been here a second yet. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, like,
Wait.
there hasn't, I haven't even like spilled my coffee on you yet. Come on. You can't. Ah.
Exactly.
But I think, excuse me, I think that's one of the other components is like, you don't know, like maybe they're now going through a divorce.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they have a special needs child at home that all of their energy is taken, you know, at home, which obviously that is a thing, but then there's not much energy left at work. I mean, I think that's one thing that I've kind of thought about a lot is that, especially when you're working or dealing with somebody who's burned out, I'm like, A, cut them a break. You don't know what's going on unless you ask. B, ask. C, show some actual compassion. D, let them tell you kind of what is going on as much as they want to disclose. And E, I don't think you necessarily want to be in the problem solving mode, but you want to just let them know that like you're available and whatever you can do, you know, let me know if there's something I do to help. Can I see that patient? Can I do that case for you? Can I take that night of call so you can get, you know, a little recovered? And then E, let them know, or whatever letter I'm on Q, let them know that like, could I check back in with you in a couple days or weeks and see how you're doing? I think one of the other the other components for burnout is defined as emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and lack of personal accomplishment. But I like to add in like hopelessness, powerlessness, and isolation. So I think a lot of people, they start to get so burned out, they get in this little cocoon, or I call it the box, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to get out of it. So I think by engaging with them, you're like, hey, let's open that box up a little bit. Let's let you out and let you know that there are people who care about you. You know, fascinating thing about my book, my book's been out for a couple of weeks, and the number of people who are buying not one copy, but they're buying like 3 and 4 and 5 copies. And they're like, I kept one for me. I gave one to my brother who's a doctor. I gave one to my favorite doctor. I gave one to my dentist. I gave one to my lawyer. Because, you know, they're like, all of these people in my life are exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, they're burned out.
Yeah. And, you know, I can correlate that to the patient experience, right? Like after you're done with treatments and just dealing with the fact that you're dealing with a chronic illness, like especially like cancer, that's exactly how you feel. And it's one of those things that going through the treatments and going for surgery and chemo and all that, like you go through the motions, you go to this appointment, to that appointment, to the next appointment.
You have to follow the protocol. Yeah.
Yeah. But then it's like, you're kind of left alone. There's nothing else. There's no more appointments. So like, you're cured. See you later. See you in 6 months. And you're kind of left on your own. You know, your social worker disappears, your therapist disappears, unless you keep on with them. But that's where I feel, especially, you know, I speak from my own experience. That's when I felt I got hit, like smacked in the face with the emotional side. And it's exactly what you're talking about.
All the support just gone. Yep.
Yeah. And exactly how you described it is exactly how I was feeling. And I was like, my goodness, like it's so true. So besides the loved ones in your life, you know, that are going through burnout, look and make sure that you go through the A through Q checklist with those in your life, like anybody in your life. I think the points that you make are extremely valid. And I think it's a conversation that we need to have regularly.
And thank you for bringing that up. I mean, to tell you the truth, like I could have written this book and put it in a drawer and it would have helped me. But I was like, you know what? I think that there's somebody else, like maybe one other person might, you know, that's kind of my joke. Like if somebody other than my mother buys a copy of the book, then maybe that means it's successful. But I was like, you know, if it can prevent one other person from going through what I went through, or prevent someone from getting to that point at all, or prevent somebody from committing suicide. Because in the US, about 1 physician per day commits suicide. So those are kind of my overriding goals. But I feel like there are just times where as long as you know that someone is there with you, then it's like, it makes it like 1,000,000% less isolating and scary and lonely. And the thing that I talk a lot about with our clients and people when we're talking about burnout, I'm like, this is not like, it's not like, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you know, cancer, hopefully there are, and many times there are cures for cancer, but I feel like with burnout, I kind of think of this more like addiction. And clearly no one's addicted to burnout, but like, it's basically recovery from, like,
Yeah.
and there's not a cure, there's not some magic pill, like I'm going to take this pill and boop, I'm going to be all better, I'm no more burnout. Like, no, it's every day is another day for you to prove to yourself how well you're doing and how well you're taking care of yourself. And every day is another opportunity for life, you know, to challenge you and to throw that, you know, angry patient, you know, at you, to throw like a missing supply in the operating room, to have somebody have a bad outcome. It's life will continue to be life. And I do feel like, you know, a lot, like 95%, 99% of life is how you respond to it. And that's one thing that I've kind of learned over this process, is that I could put myself in or get myself out of really bad moods. And now that I know that, then I try to control, I guess, my reality frame more, and make sure that I'm very mindful of my reactions and the thoughts that I'm thinking and the direction that I'm putting myself in, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a very long-winded answer, but.
Yeah, no, and it brings up a valid point, right? You can only control yourself. You can't ever control the external factors, but you can control how you react to them. And that also adds to the stress, which then adds to the burnout, right? So mindfulness is a huge thing that we talk about. We talk about journaling, meditating. Is there anything specific outside of like recognizing when you're about to not be in such a good mood that you do?
I've read a lot of books in the last couple of years, and BJ Fogg is a guy he's actually a behavioral science professor at Stanford, and his whole thing is habits. Like, how do you change your life? And I'm a pretty big believer that you are really a sum total of library habits. Maybe up to 40 or 50% of your actions every day are habitual. So if you're habitually angry, surprise, that's how your day is going to go. And one of his things he says is, you know, you want to wake up and in the morning, like you put your feet on the floor and you say to yourself, today is going to be a great day. Yeah. So if like you start your day with that frame, and lots of people are like, oh, it's woohoo. And I'm like, you know what? I think at least, even if you don't believe it, some part of your brain will hear it and will believe it, and gives you that kind of upward, upward incline or flight path to your day, instead of something that's, you know, or you either start in neutral or you start out, kind of with a scowl on your face. So
yeah, I mean, you're speaking to somebody who every day turns to my boyfriend and I say to him, I'm like, we made it through the night. We get to live another day. Let's make it awesome. Yeah, like I'm not even kidding. I just like, we celebrate waking up every morning, you know, and it's like, and the first thing we do is we go for a walk. We live in Sarasota, so we're 5 minutes from the bay, and we just start our day off with just being in nature and loving life. And then it's like, it just sets the tone for your day. Like, you're so right. It sets the tone. It sets your mindset. Like, you know, you're kind of invincible. If you stay there, then it's kind of like a shield, right? It's like
it's like you almost, the rest of the day, you decide what you're going to allow into your like thought pattern and your life. You're like, oh, traffic is bad. I'm like, okay, I get to listen to the radio longer, listen to this podcast that I like longer, get to listen to Lori longer.
Yeah, thank you.
I got a flat tire. I'm like, hey, I have AAA, and I met some cool guy in the street while I was waiting for him to change my tire. I think people are so like busy has become the new fine. Like, how you doing? Like, people don't even say fine anymore. Like, most people just say they're busy. I'm like, really? I'm like, that's what we're down to? Like, you got your checklist of things. Like, that's like the sum total of your life. I'm like, I would rather go back to fine. I'd rather go back to I lived in Central America for a while and traveled in Spain, and like, when somebody says like, "Que pasa?" Like, how are you? Like, they want to know. It's not just like that turns into like a half-hour conversation,
I
you know.
love that.
It's like that's a very important thing in that culture. And I think like unfortunately Americans have been so like productivity driven and so manic about whatever life, money, you know, achievement, that it's like let's like let's put some life back in your life. I guess that, you know, I like to
Yeah.
say that because I'm like, it goes by fast. You know, like my kids are college graduates this year, and I feel like it was like 10 minutes ago when they were like in diapers, you know,
Yeah.
it is a blink.
And in a way, I feel that COVID has helped us slow
Yeah.
down a bit. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think that's true. Obviously, many horrible things about COVID and the way we're dealing with it in the U.S. But yes, you know, interestingly, my kids, like their college graduation got all screwed up because they're supposed to graduate this past spring. So they're doing it next year. But like, it's kind of like cool that everybody's home. Like all my kids are home, which like I feel like I have like a second chance to kind of like spend more time with them. So that has been very cool. But yeah, many horrible things about COVID, but that has been a nice side effect.
Yeah, we're not even going to touch that subject, but like to everyone to everyone really, whether you're dealing with it personally or you know somebody affected, like we are with you and our thoughts are definitely with you. Now, one of the things that you do a lot of, I noticed on your website, you do speaking engagements. You know, you have webinars that you have going on. You want to speak a little bit about that?
You know, I mean, I'm happy. You know, I've spoken to lots of different groups. I just gave a virtual keynote for burnout and wellness seminar sponsored by kind of the Mayo Clinic. That was a lot of fun. I had never done that before. You know, in-person things, I'm speaking to a group of pre-med students at one of our local universities here. And my thing always is I just want people, you know, it's kind of one of those things, you know, you have been through a path as a cancer survivor. And that's really, I feel like that's probably why you're doing this for
Oh,
other.
100%.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
can like say, hey, I've been on that path. I know where you are. You'll get through it. These are the sucky parts. These are the okay parts. You're going to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like, I feel like that's the same thing for me. You know, if I can help somebody with, oh, my accumulated wisdom, you know, whatever you want to call it. I think that's useful. You know, you kind of want, it's like the same to your kids. You like want the best for your kids, but you also kind of want to like maybe help them avoid some of the mistakes that you know, like, okay, don't touch the wire, you know, like
Right.
don't touch the hot stove, you know,
No,
avoid the silly things that I've done, you know, give yourself a slightly, you know, better head start. So.
absolutely. And, you know, I agree with you. You said it earlier where, you know, if we can help one person today by having this conversation, like we've done our job, that's truly what I believe. I mean, I have literally, my life was turned upside down when I got cancer. And it was one of those things that I'm like, if I feel this way and I know the system, how do other people do it? And that's how this evolved to what it is today. And I'm very, very fortunate that I'm able to have a platform to share, you know, like yourself, like share the knowledge that you've learned with a not so great
Experience.
thing, right? Yeah. So thank you for that. Now, how can people find you?
You know, I like at this point, I feel like I'm a bad rash. I'm like, you can't get rid of me. I'm like, jeffmoody.com, jeffmoodymd.com. I'm on Facebook, Jeff Moody MD. I'm on LinkedIn, Jeff Moody MD. Live streaming on YouTube. I have an email list. Like I said, it's like I'm like a bad rash. Like, you know,
Love
you
it.
can't get rid of me. You know,
We don't want to get rid of you.
I won't go away. So.
Your message is important and people need to hear it. As somebody who has personally dealt with what you have gone through, and I didn't realize it at the time until this conversation, you know, I could have spared myself a lot of heartache. I mean, I have left jobs because I thought it was the environment instead of me just being burnt out, right? Like we do some drastic things when we don't realize what is going on. So, you know, people need to hear this. They need to hear your message. They need it. And they need to buy your book ultimately, right? Like, so the book is called
Sure.
The Doctor is Burnt Out, a physician's guide to recovery. And, you know, based on this conversation, it's more than just physicians. So if you feel that, you know, you are burnt out in any aspect of your life, I'm really clear that this book will help you out. So thank you so much for your time today. Like, this has been amazing. Like you're really fantastic. And if we could support you as a community in any way, please let us know.
Well, and we were talking beforehand, you know, we've had some cancer things go on in the last couple of years in my family. If there's anything, you know, we can do to help out your community, happy to do it as well.
Oh, so, thank you so much. I know there's a lot of souls that will appreciate that.
Great.